Welcome to Guy Code, a podcast dedicated to imparting dad wisdom to my son, with your host, Koji Steven Sakai, and friends.
Welcome. This is episode 26, and I'm Koji. My guest today is producer Ken Tullo, who has graciously agreed to come on the show to give my son some advice. Hi, Ken.
Hey, Koji, how you doing, my friend?
I'm good. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you.
I'll read. I found this on IMDb. I think it's IMDb, but I found this on IMDb so you can tell me how accurate this bio of you is. So Ken has over 20 years of producing experience and has worked predominantly for companies such as NBA Entertainment, NFL Network, Fox Sports, Tennis Channel, Audience Sports, E! Entertainment, and Imaginary Forces. He has a proven track record of high-quality content development, execution, delivery, as well as creative team leadership, editorial supervision, and design visualization. Does that sound about right?
I want to meet this guy. He sounds very impressive. A very impressive guy. I would please introduce him to me, please.
Why don't you tell us about yourself a little bit?
Okay, Koji. I was born in New Haven, Connecticut, and I grew up in a suburb of New Haven, of the city. And I studied at Roman Catholic schools over the years in my youth. And there was a big emphasis on sports, especially in my hometown. It was very sports obsessed. And I definitely got caught up in that. And it's really informed me in how I look at my life. And I usually look at it through a sports lens. Wow. And with sports, I was successful on the field also, not just enjoying, liking it, but I was successful on the field.
What sport did you play?
I was a football player in high school.
Okay.
And I parlayed that into I got admitted into Yale University. And I worked hard in school also, don't get me wrong. But I went to Yale University and I got a varsity letter there. I played all 4 years of varsity football there. So
what position did you play?
I was a lineman. I was a lineman.
Okay.
So and freshman year in high school, I tried out for tight end and I missed my one pass attempt.
That changed your whole life.
And they sent me to the lineman, the line coach was like, "Come over here, buddy. You're with us." I said, "Can I get one more chance? Can I get one more chance?" And he goes, "Sorry, you missed it."
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So.
Well, if you're from Connecticut, what are the major sports teams, like the Patriots? Is that what?
It's a very interesting place, especially Southern Connecticut, because I grew up in New Haven. So New Haven is halfway between New York City and Boston.
Oh, okay.
So you have the mixing. It's like the Hatfields and the McCoys in New Haven, in Southern Connecticut, because you get a mixture. East of New Haven and north of New Haven is Boston fans, but west of New Haven, there's a Metro North train line that goes right into New York City. So all those people are mostly all New York fans. And my father, we gravitated on the Metro North line. So going to Knicks games in New York City, driving to Yankee Stadium. And then the thing is, back in the 70s, when I was a kid, it was the Hatfields and McCoys. You're getting fights about the Yankees and Red Sox. And I still have never been to Fenway Stadium because I won't step in there. I won't step into the place. I wish I had more maturity to do that. But yeah, so.
That's like, I remember I dated a San Francisco, I'm a Dodgers fan. I dated a San Francisco Giants fan once. And we literally broke up because of the Giants, because she loved the Giants and I loved the Dodgers. And it's not that, that wasn't the only reason, but for me, it's like, I'd rather have you not even like baseball. If you didn't like baseball, it'd be better than if you like the Giants, the one team I hate more than anybody else.
Well, exactly. Well, people ask me if I'm a baseball fan. And I say, I'm not a baseball fan. I'm a Yankees fan. So that's how deep it goes in terms of, the passion. So
yeah, me too with the Lakers. I'm a Lakers fan, not a basketball fan. So once the Lakers are no longer involved in the playoffs, I don't really watch.
Yeah,
That's why for the last 6 years they've been terrible, and so I've had the playoff times for myself. I don't have to watch basketball anymore.
Yeah, 2 months of freedom.
Exactly. Well, let's get into it a little bit. So you came on with I brought you on to do some general life advice for my son. So I'd love to hear some of them. So why don't you get us started?
Well, it's funny that you asked me that originally, because I think advice is very overrated.
Okay.
And I think words are cheap. And the reason I'm saying that, a person can give you a piece of advice, but they don't follow it.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think actions speak louder than words. Okay. And as for me, I just look at, your son right now. How old is Takeo?
8.
He's 8. Okay. I think about myself when I was 8 years old. And I just remember 8-year-olds are very perceptive, and they watch you and they take everything in. You can tell them stuff, but it's not the same as watching and seeing what you're doing. And I just remember my dad, my dad worked for Yale for 43 years. He worked in a power plant. He was a blue-collar guy, worked in a power plant, rotating shifts every 3 days. And we would rotate from 4 in the afternoon to midnight for 3 days, and then 12 to 8. And he keep rotating. It was a brutal schedule. And on top of that, he owned a cleaning business. So whenever he was done with those shifts, either before the shift or after the shift, he would have to go clean restaurants, office spaces, or whatever. So he worked pretty much 365. And I just remember him getting up in all kinds of weather and 4:30 in the morning. And no matter what, he would be doing on his rounds. And it had an effect on me in terms of how hard he worked, and his, and that there's no excuses. You have to go do the work. And I think with Takeo and yours, you can give your son a lot of advice, but he sees what you're doing right now, Koji. He sees you doing podcasts. He sees you writing scripts. He sees you going to the Japanese American Museum and putting all that time and hours in there. And you're showing him what's important in life. What your hours that you're putting in is, time is valuable. Time is money. And you're putting all that time into it. He's seeing that. So it's, I think, so that's where in terms of advice, that's not a little overrated.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think most people, when they give advice, they don't actually follow it, which I'm included in that category.
Yes.
But I think it is. I love that advice that to do your actions are the most important part of it. And it's that like I love that you talked about your dad and how much he worked, and I think that's a different generation of time, right? Of people, because nowadays, I mean, we live in a society where I think a lot of us, we value our free time in ways that I don't think that our parents, my mom worked all the time. My dad worked all the time and constantly working and doing their thing. And I think it's a little bit different now, which is sad in a lot of ways. And maybe one of the reasons our country is not nearly as powerful and productive as we used to be. Right.
Yeah. And, my dad working all those hours, and didn't have if I messed up as a kid, there wasn't this long argument or discussion about why I was misbehaving. It was pretty much the judge would make his verdict very quickly and melt out his justice very quickly. So I was, so it's, I tell people my dad passed away 1.5 years ago, and a lot of his friends and people that I know from that generation, I said, they're the last of the Mohicans. They're never going to be replaced. They're a very special group of people who are just so hardworking and so giving of themselves and just thinking of others, and I don't know. You don't see that as much anymore. I don't think.
I am confident in that. There's this book I recently read called The 4-Generation Cycle. And it's about how in American history, it repeats every 4 generations, it repeats itself throughout.
Oh, wow.
And so the 4th generation, which is, I believe, is your dad's generation probably, was they're the 4th generation, which is the greatest generation, World War II generation.
Yes.
Yeah. Before that, the 4th generation was the American the Revolutionary War first in 1772.
Okay.
And then the next 4th generation was in about 1860s Civil War generation.
Yeah.
And the next generation after that was World War II. And then the next generation is actually my kid is like the tail end of that generation. And they found that like these kids are like, I mean, like a lot of people believe that I believe actually, and this book believes that the 4th generation are going to be the greatest generation. And a lot of those things that I think criticize your dad when he was a kid about that generation are the same things they talk about our children. But I think that, you know, I really hope, and maybe it's just a hope and more than anything, but I hope that this generation is gonna fix a lot of the things that we've messed up, like, you know, global warming and all this other stuff, inequality, and really change the world. The only problem is that the fourth generation is always marked by major war. Right? It's Civil War, Revolutionary War, World War II. It's always been marked by major, but also world-changing events, right? I mean, American Revolution changed a lot, Civil War changed a lot, and World War II obviously changed everything. But it's really interesting, and I really hope that you know, that givingness of that World War II generation is the same generation that our kids are gonna have. You know, I don't know. Maybe
I'm afraid for you to describe our generation is what the characteristics are.
Well, so when were you? I mean, what generation are you?
Actually,
Baby boomer?
I'm not a baby boomer. No,
Okay.
I'm just at the very beginning of X. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you're on the cusp of like, I mean, I'm on the cusp of like X and millennial.
Yes.
So like,
gotcha.
But I don't consider myself X and I don't consider myself a millennial. There's actually like a different term for it, but it's interesting because I think like actually like the baby boomers are similar to like the generation in the 1920s, the generation in the 1840s, the generation in like the 1750s. And it's really interesting to see like how they all were like very similar, but
yes.
But, anyway. But the cycle is really similar in that, okay, so there's this major moment, and then the next generation, there's like they try to rebel against everything, like the baby boomers, and then there's next generation, they don't care anymore, which is X, and then there's this generation that like is kind of caught in the middle of those two, which is like millennials, and then the next generation like fights and fixes everything. Because you know, I this is way off field, but one of the funny things about like the greatest generation is people don't remember is that before World War II, they thought that generation was worthless human beings. They said these guys are soft and they could never win. But like, so for example, there's this really famous story where General Patton hit a kid during training.
Yes. He slapped him. Yeah, he slapped.
And then everyone like freaked out because they're, you know, like you can't hit a kid. But then the older people were like, well, how do you train people if you can't hit somebody? And then obviously they went and won the war and did all this other crazy stuff. But anyway, sorry. Let's go to your next piece of advice. Do you have another piece of advice?
Well, that was not really advice. Oh, okay. So it was an observation.
Observation. Okay, sorry.
Now, and then I can tell you some lessons I've learned.
Okay, yeah, let me hear some lessons. There you go.
Lessons I have learned.
Okay.
Let's see here. So, as I told you, I see the world through a sports prism.
Yeah.
And I think the greatest thing I learned from sports is that hard work pays off. And it pays off, but not necessarily when you want it to and as soon as you want it to.
Yeah. And
you have to put in every day. You got to pay your dues and put the time in every day. As you know, Koji, as a writer, you have to sit at the desk and write, and you have to sit at your keyboard and type. It has to, you have to do it every day. And unfortunately, but that's just the way life is. You're not going to see progress every day. It's very incremental. Some days you might have a big jump and a big advancement or something like that, but it might not happen, and I tell you in terms of sports and in terms of, pep talks and this came up where I was at a coaching clinic and the USC assistant coach had been there for he's an old school coach. And he said, you got to keep at it. You got to keep at it. And I was working on construction and I had to take apart these stairs and I had to break up these stairs to build a new building. And I had a sledgehammer and I kept hitting that. I kept hitting the stairs and nothing was happening. I was like, I got to keep hitting the stairs and they need me to break this up. And he says, I finally hit it and I saw a crack, a small crack. And that's all I needed. That meant I kept hitting that and I broke it up, so, and it's like, you got to keep hitting that steps until you see a crack, and the thing is, before you know it and you look up 2 years later, 3 years later, or whatever, same thing for me. When I played, the thing is, I always said I was successful in sports. However, I was like Rudy. My freshman year in high school, I was a blocking dummy. I was terrible. I barely made the team. I was a blocking dummy. Okay. But for some reason, I love the sport. I love being around the sport. I love the people there, the camaraderie. I love the coaches that I had. I could tell there's something special about these people. And I said, I want to be here. I want to stay on the field. And I was very weak upper body. I was like Pee Wee Herman. And the coach opened up the gym for me. And he says the senior has to come in before school and he lifts weights because he has an afternoon job, because I was so embarrassed of how weak I was. And I lifted weights with that senior until I was strong enough to lift with all the other kids.
Yeah.
Okay. And and I kept at it and I stayed with it. And 4 years later, I'm a football player. I am a football player. I'm a starting lineman on the state championship football team and getting recruited by college. There's no way 4 years earlier I was a blocking dummy. I would have seen that, but I just kept my head down and just kept working.
I love that. And it reminds me of, I mean, you're a sports fan, so you should know this, but after the 2008 Olympics with Kobe and the basketball team and had, I think LeBron and KD and both of those guys, they talked about how they saw Kobe working out before practice, working out after practice. And I think that they realized what they needed to do in order to become a champion. And I don't think it's a coincidence that both of those guys really had their best years after that.
Yeah, it shaped the NBA, Koji. Yeah. That Olympics shaped the NBA in terms of what it became. You know what I mean? That these young stars saw what kind of work the superstar put in. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That shaped the NBA for years to come.
Yeah.
And these people and then the guys who are learning under LeBron right now, who are on those young guys watching LeBron and watching KD. You know what I mean? And that's a great story to bring up.
Because I just think that, because Kobe at that point was like past his prime a little bit. And I think, but he's still, I think LeBron talked about how he'd come to practice and Kobe would have been shooting since 4, and then after practice, Kobe would still be shooting and LeBron and everybody else wanted to leave. And then by the end of the Olympics, all of them were with him in the morning, and all of them were after practice, and they're still doing it.
Yeah.
I think that perspective. But one of my things I always talk about is that, one of my challenges with youth sports now is they don't keep score until 8, 9 years old. And I think that it's really sad because I think first of all, winning is great, but losing is just as important as skill.
Oh, sure.
And I think losing is a really good way to learn how to push yourself,
Mm-hmm.
Like it shouldn't be the end all, like just because everybody loses, like, like you said, like it takes time and work. But I remember my son with jujitsu, he, the first real tournament he went to, he lost. And I remember he lost the third place match. So he got 4th place. And I remember he realized he didn't get a medal. And I said, well, if you wanted a medal, you win that last match, you get a medal. And then like for the first time, pretty much in his life, he had something to work for. Right. And and then we started having conversations about like, look how you behave in practice. Look at the way you stand in practice. Look how you fight in practice. And then you expect to come to a tournament and win. If you want to win a tournament, you got to practice like you were fighting a tournament. And, for me, that was like a great life, because I don't think he's going to professionally do jiu-jitsu, but I want him to learn and understand what you're saying, which is he needs to work hard every day, every practice, all the time, in order to become the person he eventually wants to be. I don't care what that is, but you're right. It's like, you can't just go for it. Like my biggest pet peeve with other writers, is people talk about writing more than they actually write. They're like, I'm a writer. And then they're out with their friends drinking coffee.
Yes.
And I remember I was dating somebody who was like, what are you going to do on Saturday night? I'm like, I'm writing. What are you doing on Sunday? I'm writing. Like maybe on like Wednesday I'll be done with my project so we could hang out. But I'm spending all my time writing because I'm a writer. I have to write this every day, all the time.
Action speak louder than words.
Exactly. Well, what else? Do you have other lessons that you'd like to share?
Well, just to finish what you were saying about, that's okay. I know I had one more point to make about, your son's league not doing losses and wins and losses or scores.
Yeah.
Part of it is, they want to, and I do this with my girls. I don't want to, the competition part.
Yeah.
First, enjoy the movement. Of the sport. Enjoy why it's so beautiful to the different techniques and the movement, just to enjoy it too at first, because there has to be the fun, love, the joy, that the wins and losses are coming. Don't worry. Everybody, that's coming, and you're going to be measured and set stats.
Yeah.
And
But on some
this and
level,
that,
I think
that's
that
coming.
losing is such an important skill, you know, that
Oh, yes.
to
Oh,
like
yes.
learn how to
Believe me.
lose
Yeah.
is like, right.
Oh,
It's like
believe
an
me.
important skill.
I lost my last, both senior year in high school and senior year in college. I lost both championship games. We're winning at halftime of both games. I'm still trying to win those games today. I'm not kidding you about that. Whenever I can't get up in the morning,
Yeah.
I don't want to do something. I think, something, I want to win that game still.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it gives me that impetus. Maybe if I had won that game, I don't know.
Well,
Would I have that same? I don't know if I would have.
And that's where I kind of like, for youth sports, I feel like we're trying to shield our children from that.
Yeah.
And I think that we might go too far in
Right.
kind
Yeah,
of shielding
I get
our
you.
children from that. And I think it's such an important, like, I think Steve Nash, he has a basketball camp in Canada, and he talks about that the biggest difference between a guy who he knows is going to make it versus a guy who doesn't is they watch to see how much much they're willing to fight for it. Like if something goes wrong, are they going to get back up and do it?
Okay.
And I think that when there's when we're shielding people from that, my big worry is that we're not giving them the tools.
Resilience. Building that resilience muscle.
Yeah. Because I think what parents go wrong is when they're like, you suck because you lost. And that's the wrong answer. Right? Like my son, I still love you I don't care if you win a medal or not. That doesn't mean anything to me. What I want to see is you try as hard as you can.
Correct.
More practice, before the practices, during the practices, in the tournament, and then be a good sport about it. And if you win, great, awesome. But if you lose, you gotta think about, first congratulate the other person, be a good person about it, and then motivate yourself for the next fight, because not everyone wins everything, right? And so I don't know. I think to me it's like that resilience, like you said, is really, really important in life, because even in life, like you could not get your job, you're not going to get your career, like you're a producer, you're doing your thing, and it wasn't easy. It's not like you fell out of bed and became a producer. I mean, lots of people would want your job, and lots of people probably want my job. So,
Well, they could have it right now if they want. I'll tell you that. Oh my God, this is just. How many times can you hit your head against the wall? Oh my! I mean, this is not easy, especially with everything going on right now.
Yeah. No. Exactly. All right. Well, you have another lesson you'd like to share? If not, it's cool. But
yeah, sure. I have a couple more. I have. You need to get out into the world. You know what I mean? It's like nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen sitting on your couch. Steven Spielberg's not going to knock on your door.
He's not?
And getting out. Well, he hasn't. Oh, hello.
Sorry.
But you have to get out into the world, and there's different forms of that getting out into the world. Meaning physically get out into the world and networking and going to this, going to that, putting yourself out there. It also means sending out your scripts. Sending out not keeping it to yourself. You have to be brave to say, okay, my voice is strong enough and unique enough that I want to send it out there.
Yeah.
And I think, something to your son is saying, Takeo, you have a unique voice. There's no one else in the world like you. Nobody. You are the son of Koji and Marsha, and there's no other person like that. Okay. And everything that has happened to you and your response to it is unlike anybody else's.
Yeah.
Okay. And not everybody's going to like what you have to say. You have to be ready for that too. But you have to get it out into the world, and your voice is important.
I love that. I love that advice. I always tell my son that our life is like music, and that if you're with people who don't appreciate your music, you shouldn't be with them, whether it's friends or family or work people, or lovers. It's, that music, our voice is who we are. And there are people who appreciate it, and there are people who don't appreciate it.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
And you have to, there's some people not going to appreciate it. And you just have to realize that, and you have to be easy on yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In terms of the perfectionist gene, and where, there's going to be plenty of people, like we just said, who are not going to like what you did, or have, there's the industries are built on criticism and tearing apart what artists do. And, and you have to realize that that's what people do. They just tear stuff apart.
Yeah.
That's their,
That's a good note. I mean, two things I tell people in my writing classes. One of them I say, even at my point in my career, which hopefully I'm a mid-career person, I still, out of every 100 things I ask for, 99 are getting rejected. Even
Yeah.
at this point in my career, I have lots of
Yeah.
things I want to do that never happen because, lots of people say no before somebody could say yes. And, and that's even harder if you've never done anything, right? If you're like just starting, that's 99.9 of it's going to probably be no. And then, and then the other thing I always, I tell people about, about criticism is ultimately if they could, like, for example, as a writer, I'm a writer, right? So as a writer,
Yes.
if the people who are criticizing me, what I always tell them is to think about this. If they could write it, they would write it themselves. But because they can't write it, they're just telling you what they can't do. So you have to just accept it and just listen and not fight it, but kind of just really listen to the advice. But
Yeah.
it's hard. I mean, I was just dealing with, I won't name this person, but I was dealing with this producer who gave me the worst, like just really asshole notes. And it was just really hard because, I mean, and the funny thing was the notes were awesome. Like they were actually spot on notes, but the
Okay.
delivery of the notes were terrible. Like it was just really like jerky,
Jerky.
just kind of just, like just making very snide comments about things. And I'm just like, come on, man. Like, I accept your notes. I don't accept these comments because they're really like personal. They're like personal comments or just,
Yeah.
and you're just like, man, there's a nice way to do notes and there's a mean way to do notes. So that was a really frustrating process on my part, for my part.
Well, it's interesting because see, now you're sitting in that chair taking that. So when the roles are reversed, you don't want to be treated that way.
Yes.
And you treat people differently.
Yeah.
Because I learned as a producer. Before I was a producer, I was an editor. And I'm sitting in front of an Avid. I'm stuck in there for 8 hours putting stuff together. And then this producer comes in. I don't like this. I don't like that. I don't like this. I don't like that. And I was like, if this person says I one more time, I'm going to take this pen and shove it in their eye. I swear to I'm like, so when I became a producer, I'm sitting, and I come in there and sit next to the editor and I'm like, yeah, like, oh, and I just caught myself getting ready to say I.
Yeah.
And instead I'm saying, I said, wow, that looks great. Do you think it might look better if we try this? Could we try this? What do you think of this? Do you think if we tried it this way, it would be better? Or do you think if this way, you know what I mean? You want to, it's a process and you're working together as a team. That's what I loved getting back to sports again. I love being part of a team. There's no doubt about it. I love being part of a team, the give and take. Somebody has a different perspective than you, thinks out of that you would never even think of.
Yeah.
And as you know, Koji, from working with other writers and in collaboration, and it's difficult when you have someone in that team who's not a team player, and it really can slow things down and really bring things to a screeching halt.
Yeah.
A halt, unfortunately,
Oh yeah, definitely. And you're right. It after getting those not comments, I thought a lot about my comments I give students when I'm responding to their scripts or whatever, and just to really think about like the kinds of words I say and how I say it and the delivery of them. Because again, his notes were great. That's the thing that's like most annoying is that they were spot on notes. It was just the way he just delivered it was just really, and it would get to the point where I do 5 pages of notes and I'm like, 5 pages of comments and I'm just like, I can't do it anymore. I'm going to stop for today because I can't handle this guy anymore.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I don't care how much I'm getting paid or not getting paid. I just need
to
move on.
I'll give you my pen and you can gouge him in the eye like I want to gouge.
Although, the advice I give the students about notes is to be a door person. And what I mean by that is you sit there, you say, thank you to the notes. You take notes, you take the comments down, you write it down. You ask for clarification if you don't have it, but otherwise you say thank you to the notes and you just keep taking notes, because ultimately, if you don't want to look like you're being defensive, you don't want to look like you're being jerky about it. You just kind of take notes, and then you have to decide what makes sense artistically to you, but B also who's the most important person in the room, because if the person who's giving me $10 million to make this movie is giving me notes,
Yeah.
I probably got to listen to him or her. Like,
Big.
or if an
Oh,
intern is
yeah.
giving me notes, then it might not be as important. It doesn't mean I don't accept it or don't think it's important, but I'm going to take that with more of a grain of salt than I would with somebody who's literally funding the entire thing. I'm going to be like, okay, I need to think about this a little bit. I might not do it, but I'm going to give it a little bit more of a thought. And then the other thing I tell students is to front load your notes, to make more of the front load, to make more of the notes up, do more of the notes up front, to save the stuff that's really important in the end. So that, like, so for example, on a script, when people are reading the script, they'll say, oh yeah, he's making all my changes. And by the end, he's not as worried about a change that you're not making, because you've kind of made a lot of the changes in the beginning. If you agree with it, then it doesn't matter. But if you're kind of fighting, and ultimately, I've been in situations where, like, I have to just write it, even if I don't agree with it. I just write it, and I know it's going to be edited out later anyway, because it doesn't make any sense in the script. But you want it in, cool.
It's great. It's great advice. It's great advice, Koji, in terms of thank you and writing. Writing notes saying thank you as the go-to, because everybody has the emotional connection to their work. It's human nature. You have connection to the work. And when it's getting criticized, you're getting criticized, right? And people have a hard time disconnecting the two. Now, my very first video I put together at NBA Entertainment, it was just an in-arena video, I think it was. I'm trying to remember whatever video. I think it was for an in-arena video we put together or something like that. And all the new entry-level video people, we were PA/editors, and they gave us a shot at putting some stuff together. And we walk into the office and we watch the video. And I remember the executive producer said to somebody, it's Joe, it's not that I don't like you. It's just I don't like your video. And it got a big laugh, in a way, for him to say that.
Yeah.
But it put a light bulb over my head in terms of, something, it's kind of true. You're separating the work from yourself. Once you do it, it's separate from you. It's its own entity. And you have to treat it as such. So you don't take things as personally anymore either. But like you said, it's hard when you put tens of hundreds or whatever hours into this thing, and that's the Zen part of it, where you try to separate yourself and, taking these criticisms. And like you said, you have to weigh, okay, who's giving me this criticism and these notes, and,
if your boss is giving you the notes, then you probably should take it. Right. It's the most important person.
I don't remember. I'm not sure if you were, when Ali Leroy, if he was in our diversity workshop for the Producers Guild, if he came to speak, was he in our?
I don't remember.
Ali Leroy was executive producer of Everybody Hates Chris.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
Yeah, and a great line that he had was that he would put something really over the top, horrendous in the scripts, that he knew that the network execs would red flag it. And he did that on purpose because he wanted to give them some red meat, that they can just feel they did something, they affected the project, they put their fingerprints on it. So he would put something really over the top, bad, and, in terms of really not fitting network standards or whatever. And he would throw that as a red herring into the script to try to help keep what he really wanted in the script, So I always stayed with me in terms of these little tricks that writers would, try to do. So
they do that a lot in China because of the censorship laws.
Oh, yes.
A lot of times you would put things that that are not going to pass the censors, so that they could flag it, and then you take it out. And then a lot of the stuff that's like a little bit more questionable, you might go in because it's not as much of it's not as big as like the red flags or red herrings that you're putting in.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then everybody's happy, right? Everybody, the censors, they get their little, like, oh, we found this, good censor, kind of thing. They can go home happy.
Exactly. That's hilarious. Although I'm gonna say, when I was at USC, I had I was dating this woman, and we broke up, and everyone kind of liked her, not me. And so when we workshop stuff, I remember just getting taken down, and just realizing that, and during that process, I remember realizing that, for in this situation, it was personal. and that their notes were not based on like my work, but it was very much like a personal thing, and kind of understanding that sometimes it is like they just don't like you, or sometimes they just like, like actually this producer I think is pretty much that. He just didn't like me, and it was fine because I did the project for him, but it's just, it's like one of those things where you have to kind of realize where people are coming. And I actually take that back. It's not that he didn't like me personally.
Yeah.
But he didn't like the school of like, I went to film school, I did the writing, I did this, I worked for this place, and all these, like, he didn't like that.
Please.
Like, he likes the people.
God.
He's a self-made person. So
yeah,
he doesn't like kind of that. I went from that world. And I think he just wanted to show that he knew more than me about stuff, and he'd argue about
it's too bad that people have to, get into the label part and the, and not just dealing with you on a personal basis, but that's what society's built upon, a lot of this prestige. And you see what's going on with USC with these parents trying to get the kids into these schools. You know what I mean? That's the whole part of it, is the prestige of it. And, it's
or cheating their way or buying their way.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. It's stomach turning,
Well, thank you so much. We're running against the end of the time here, but is there a way for people to follow you or to find out what you're working on? I
don't want anybody to follow me. No thanks. No.
Okay.
I'm on Instagram, Ken_Tullo.
Okay.
LinkedIn. I'm very sociable on social media.
Okay.
Look me up on Facebook. Instagram, IMDb, I'm all there. I'm trying to, actually trying to do more of the branding, more branding of myself as a brand, which I haven't done a great job over the years. That's another episode. If you want to talk?
Well, I'll put notes, or I'll put some of the links in the show notes so people could just click on the link so people could find you.
Excellent. But thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much for coming on the show and for giving some advice to my son. And thank you everybody for listening. Please, if you have time, please, I'm asking people for this show to tell one person about Guy Code and tell them why you like the show and why they should be listening to the show. Because even though this advice is mostly for my son, it is a show that I think that a lot of people could take, because ultimately we're just talking about how to be better people. And that's the most important thing. So find us on social media if you want to be on there. We're all Guy Code Pod on Facebook and Instagram. And thank you guys so much.